information. And space race is its own independent thing. This is the only historical part of anything. I mean, it's started it all. But this is the only like Cold War related stuff. So
when you're ready,
makes sense to compile all of it. So space race. Okay. We've already talked about Sputnik, but it is important to mention. The beginnings, it technically began in 1955 when both nations were like, okay, we're gonna face off against each other in the new frontier of space. But Sputnik 1 is the first major event in the space race, and it occurred on October 4th, 1957, when the Soviets launched the first satellite in space, which was a 58-centimeter metal sphere with 4 radio antennas. Those are basically what kind of look like legs a little bit.
This is a cool basketball.
Yeah, it was about the size of a basketball. Yeah. So after 3 weeks in orbit, it lost power, basically just floating under space now. And after 3 months in orbit, it burned up upon re-entry. But seeing as the Soviets started with an immediate lead, as they were the only people who didn't the U.S. was like, oh, can't have that. We're directing millions in science, engineering, math, school. God, it's been a while since they've done that now.
Literally horrified by the United States because realized prior to this point, we were convinced that we were the most technologically advanced country in the world. After all, we developed the atom bomb first and all this other stuff, and all of a sudden, here comes Russia. Well, the Soviet Union saying, ha-ha, take this, Americans.
We claimed that they were close to us with things like the missile gap, and that was really just to scare citizens into supporting the U.S. But in reality, the Soviets were behind in a lot of stuff. But suddenly, there was this absolutely new thing that they did.
And we're like,
we haven't done. So crazy. Anyway, our first satellite, Explorer 1, this little stupid pencil thing with 4 legs of its own, was launched on January 31st, 1958. And it was equipped with a cosmic ray detector, which I assume is probably what these antennas are used for. And it revealed the existence of a belt of charged particles, which is what this is, right here, called the Van Allen belts. And they were named after one of the people, I don't know which one, but one of these 3 guys, worked on Explorer 1.
And it has to be with the magnetic field.
Yeah. While the subsequent launches of Explorer 2 and Explorer 5 didn't make it to orbit, was something that we struggle with later on with actual people. Explorer 3 and Explorer 4 were launched on March 26th and July 26th and operated fine.
In the same year?
Yeah. All of these were in 58. Yeah. After testing with a bunch of apes, it was time to send a bald ape into space. And the Soviets decided no animals, what did Soviet 2 have, not Soviet 2, Sputnik 2 have on it? It had a dog named Rica. Probably died. No, it did die. It probably died while it was going. It probably died from heat exhaustion. But,
Probably died from G-force.
No, they put it in those little spinny things.
Poor dog.
Actually did. They fed it on a nutrient paste, and they also made its cage smaller, which just made it, not go to the bathroom. But,
You imagine him experiencing G-force for the first time.
And then it just dies from heat exhaustion. Oh, God, that's terrible. Anyway.
The dog never came back after shooting
He's probably radiated now.
They're probably
Super dog.
Probably dead.
It is dead, but it comes
actually,
back.
that's how the underdog superhero came into being.
Exactly. They come back. Anyway, Yuri Gagarin was chosen to pilot the first manned mission into space. The 27-year-old senior lieutenant in the Russian Air Force was launched on April 12, 1961. And because they didn't really know things yet, the craft was mainly piloted from ground control. And he spent 108 minutes in space and completed 1 full orbit around the Earth. Vostok 1 was the return vehicle, and they didn't really figure out the details of how to land the thing effectively, so they just ejected him out and he parachuted down. But he was safe, so, you know, the fine print is there.
That's what I said. Now let's see America. Let's see our first attempt.
Yeah, all those poor Alberts. Anyway, while many, including Kennedy, congratulated the achievement, they were very worried as well because they were way ahead. And then Kennedy announced the moonshot announcement, which, if you were very attentive with listening to the Billy Joel song, that was also mentioned in, I think, the final verse. But in a joint session of Congress on May 25th, 1961, John F. Kennedy set an ambitious goal: to land a man on the moon for the end of the decade. He says it like that.
Of the decade. Decade.
Decade. I believe that this station should commit itself
To
to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. So JFK later talked.
yeah.
He talked with NASA Administrator James E. Webb and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, who you'll remember was the funny.
He's almost like a computer. I always thought of him as like a computer geek or geek guy who's like in control of defense.
He was the mutually assured destruction guy.
Yeah.
And they confirmed that such a task was possible. But as Kennedy, I'll just play the video and saying all this.
That'd be hard behind.
No, he was kind of dead at this point.
But like,
That's
it looks just like him.
That's Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yeah, that's Johnson, and that's
It looks just like him. Is this a waterfall?
These are extraordinary times, and we face an extraordinary challenge. Our strength, as well as our convictions, have imposed upon this nation the role of leader in freedom's cause. Now going on around the world between freedom and tyranny. The dramatic achievements in space which occurred in recent weeks should have made clear to us all, as did the Sputnik in 1957, the impact of this invention on the minds of men everywhere who are attempting to make a determination of which road they should take. And early in my term, our efforts in space have been under review. With the advice of the Vice President, who is Chairman of the National Space Council, we have examined where we are strong and where we are not, where we may succeed and where we may not. Now it is time to take longer strides, time for a great new American enterprise, time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth. I believe we possess all the resources and talents necessary. The facts of the matter are that we have never made the national decisions or marshaled the national resources required for such leadership. We have never specified long-range goals on an urgent time schedule or managed our resources and our time so as to ensure their fulfillment. I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I had earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. In conclusion, let me emphasize one point. It is not a pleasure for any president of the United States, as I'm sure it was not a pleasure for my predecessor, to come before the Congress and ask for new appropriations which place burdens on our people. I came to this conclusion with some reluctance. But in my judgment, this is a most serious time in the life of our country and in the life of freedom around the globe. And it is the obligation, I believe, of the President of the United States to at least make good recommendations to the members of the Congress so that they can reach their own conclusions.
So basically, he's like, hey, I'm the president, I want to go in space so we can affirm our superiority all the time.
Give us money.
Yeah, and they did. So, John Glenn and the Mercury program. Real progress for the U.S. came with its first spaceflight program, Project Mercury. First manned mission, Alan Shepard, sent him into space, but not in orbit, on May 20th, 1961. A similar mission by Virgil Gus Grissom, was similar. And Mercury 5 launched Chimpanzee in November of 1961. I believe that was the final of the Alberts that actually lived.
Cosmic 8.
So the first manned orbital mission, Mercury 6, had John Glenn on February 20th, 1962. Friendship 7 launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida. That's this ship here. And he spent 4 hours and 55 minutes in space, completing 3 full orbits, and he landed in the Atlantic Ocean. Because they were not about to, eject him.
Ejecting 40,000 feet in the air.
Like the Soviets did. But yeah, Scott Carpenter replicated the 3 orbit mission in May. Wally's Skirl did 6 in October. And the final Mercury mission, Jordan Cooper, did 22 orbits in May of the next year.
We're just going in circles.
Crazy. The Gemini program. The second NASA human space program was Gemini. Improved space travel and set new standards and records. Gemini 4 featured the first American spacewalk by Edward Ed White in June 1965. The next mission, Gemini 5, set the space endurance record for 8 days. No wonder, because that's how long the mission would need to last. Gemini 8 achieved the first docking of 2 spacecraft in orbit, which I don't say American because that was actually a thing we did first. But yeah, that was fun going to Zealand. But yeah, but it had to return to Earth due to a system error shortly after that. Gemini 12, the final Gemini mission, involved crew members working in the vacuum of space for extended periods of time. This is Ed White when he was doing his thing. And many Gemini astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, Jim Lovell, would continue to work on the next mission, Apollo.
That looks so high definition.
It's nice, almost fake. It's almost fake. But now many more will work on the next Apollo mission. Ed Whitewood. But the reason they're not really noted in that is because the next mission doesn't really go too well. Apollo 1, as part of the third American spaceflight program, on February 21st, 1967, you have Grimson and Ed, who were part of the previous space program, and Roger Chaffee. And they died in a cabin fire during a pre-launch test. And no manned flights, everyone was kind of affected by that a little bit, so no flights 22 months after that. But the Saturn V rocket, which is the famous rocket we all think of when we think of space travel, and the lunar module, which is the module we all think of when we think of the moon, were continued. Apollo 7, the next manned mission, was launched on October 11th, 1968, and it tested the command service module. And the Apollo 8 was launched in December 1968 and was the first manned mission to orbit the moon and return. Apollo 9 tested the docking and life support systems, and Apollo 10 went through all the processes, including going to the 15.6 kilometer mark, which would be where the lunar module would be released and would land on the moon. And Apollo 10 orbited the moon 31 times. So yeah.
It was Apollo 11.
Well, no, Apollo 11 is the moon landing. The Apollo 10 was.
Can we go back real quick?
Shoot. It's just about that would be needed for Apollo 11, and then Apollo 10 orbited the moon. I might edit that. But here's the before and after picture of the big
Pretty
man.
bad.
Yeah, this is the autopsy of the three men afterwards. This is Saturn V rocket. This is the the CSM, and this is the a picture of Apollo 10.
Wait, which rocket was that from?
This one?
No, the spacesuits.
Oh, the space. This was Apollo 1.
Yeah.
The cabin
Wait, Ed
fire.
White and the other ones were.
The White, Grimson, and Chaffee. I don't know which one's which.
It's kind of hard to tell.
But anyway, the fateful time is here, where we declare our supremacy in space. Apollo 11, the moon landing. On July 16th, 1969, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin launched from Kennedy Space Center on the Apollo 11 mission. After 3 days, they orbited the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin transferred to the lunar module named Eagle, and Collins, being that guy who was there but didn't get to go on the moon, had to stay behind in the CSM. And they landed in the Sea of Tranquility, which is actually a question we in our science thing. As Armstrong took his first step onto the moon, he said the famous phrase, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." What does that mean, essentially?
So
We
basically,
can move
it's
way
not
farther.
a big step, but it's a big advancement for all humanity since we're able to land on the planet.
Perfect way of saying it. Anyway, about 700 million people witnessed the televised event, which at the time was 1/5 of the world population. Now it's 1/10. Crazy time. After the two had collected soil samples, took photographs, planted the American flag, and spent 21.5 hours on the moon, they ascended back to Collins and returned back to Earth.
They spent 21 hours jumping and falling.
It's funny to me when people think that a moon landing is fake.
Yeah, there's so many things that.
I heard this man talk about it so many times.
Yeah.
Like they don't even have the
Why do you say
technology.
this man?
This man heard the school.
So here's the Kennedy, NASA place. Here's the lunar module. Here's various pictures of these guys.
Doesn't Neil Armstrong hate Elon Musk?
Well, he's dead.
Well, I'm
Buzz
talking about
Aldrin probably.
Yeah.
He's alive.
somebody wanted to hate Elon Musk.
Collins is also.
Very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Now that it's very fine. Now that it's off the lemon. That's one small step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
Anxiety.
And then he runs away.
Beautiful.
That was beautiful. He had to think of
As
what
if he
to say.
fell, as if he fell off the ladder. What are you saying?
I think, did they, people who said the moon landing was safe, they said there's no wind on the moon.
Yeah.
They
one of
kept
the big-
complaining about the flag moving, about how he moved so naturally on the moon too.
Like,
I mean, you weigh less.
Yeah. One thing is also like how in various pictures, like sometimes he's behind the shadow of the lunar module, but he looks as though he's in perfect light. But that's just the moon's reflected surface because we can see the moon. That's how it works. Anyway, Skylab. Skylab was our first. It gets a little more boring here, but Skylab was launched on May 14th, 1973, with Pete Conrad, Paul Weitz, and Joe Kerwin. And it became the first American space station. And much of the hardware from canceled Apollo missions was used for Skylab. After the first crew spent 28 days, the next spent 60, and the final spent 84 days in orbit. So during the time, each of these crews conducted 270 experiments, and it was a massive step in the prolonged effects of space exploration. After the final crew left in February of 1974, they had planned missions after that, but a bunch of things like financial restraints and various other projects kind of, stopped them from using it. And eventually, it remained in orbit until July 11th, 1979, when a bunch of parts scattered across the Indian Ocean and parts of Indonesia and Australia, which is what this picture is. This is a piece of Skylab that probably landed on this dude's brother. So.
Or like, I just think I've been planting my crops, going to harvest, and
Sad. It's crazy. But the Apollo Suez test project is the last final step in the space race. This is the end. As the relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union began to improve, remember the 70s was the time of taunt. They thought of joining together in spaceflight. In 1972, they signed the Apollo Suez test project, or they signed a treaty that allowed for this test project to begin in 1975. That's when the test project would begin. They launched within 7 hours of each other on July 15th, 1975, and docked together on July 17th. The two commanders, Thomas Stafford and Alexei Leonov, I'll let you guess which one is Russian, shook hands, exchanged gifts, and visited each other's craft. After 44 hours, they went to their respected stations, or their respected ships, and they spent several days in orbit before they returned. The mission was both a technological, political, and humanistic goal of an international handshake, literally. And Apollo crew member Vance Brand said, we were a little spark or foot in the door that started better communications. Essentially, we're the first step to greater communications. Unfortunately, Reagan had to ruin that with his own space thing. But the meeting was a symbolic end to the space race, and the two nations worked together to dock the space shuttle and Mir stations. Again, I'll let you guess which one's Russian stations in the 1990s. Yeah.
It's obviously space shuttle.
And yeah, this is a cool thing.
Look at that beautiful flag.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll let you guess which one is Russian. These are the cosmonauts and astronauts involved. This is sort of a cool illustration that I found about how they would go on separate sides of the Earth. They launch, and then they go through the various processes of decoupling with their rockets, and they meet each other in space, and they meet, and then they separate, and various things like that. Yeah, that's the end. That's the end of it all.
One more time.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna keep doing speeches in class?
there's a